Hello and welcome to Sincerely Elvis Presley. I'm Sean. Thanks for taking the time to tune in. I really appreciate it. So we begin to draw closer again to August the 16th. Where on earth did those 12 months go? Honestly, it seems to get a shorter gap between that date each year if you're anything like me. And if you are anything like me, what I tend to find myself doing as we approach that anniversary is to think more about Elvis the man rather than Elvis the entertainer, Elvis the musician, Elvis the actor, Elvis the superstar, Elvis the multitude of things he was to the world. But I kind of end up focusing more on Elvis the human being, because let's face it, that's what we lost on that fateful day, a real human being underneath all the myth, the legend, the stardom. Is a very real human being. And I think a great way to sort of get a glimpse of Elvis the human being is to look at candid photographs of him, rather than him in concert or, publicity stills or stills from the movies, whatever it might be. I think the Candids just reveal so much, the private moments that he probably wasn't expecting to be photographed, although he knew they would constantly photograph wherever he went. But I think you do get a sense of him a little bit off guard in the Candids. And I've said before, when I've shown books, I really love a Candid. But what I've got here today are 3 books that solely focus on candid photographs of Elvis, or pretty much in the main. Now, there are plenty of other books that have lots of candids. Sean Shaver's books that he released had lots of candid photographs. If you look even at like the Elvis files, you get a lot of candids in those in more recent times. But I think for me, these 3 books here are the best of the bunch where it comes to Elvis candid photographs. And I'm probably going to, bearing in mind the time of year it is, and like I said, sort of focusing on Elvis the man rather than the myth, I'm probably going to show quite a lot more of these than I normally would when I pull some books out of the collection, simply because I think they're really worth it. And also there's nothing here that's brand new, so it's not like I'm giving anything away to anybody that, might be getting them, although, obviously people might still have these to add to their collection, so I hope I don't ruin it for anyone. But I think it's worth sort of delving into these, and this is the first one. This was published. Now, Jim Curtin was a huge Elvis collector. He had a phenomenally massive Elvis collection, and published quite a few books along the way. This particular one, this is the UK first edition from 1992. It was republished in various guises, had 2 or 3, maybe 4 different covers along the way, as it sort of had a different cover in the US, I believe, and then it was republished with it. So you'll see Unseen Elvis from the collection of Jim Curtin with a number of different covers, but it's all the same book. But this is the UK first edition, and this is relatively easy to pick up in pretty much all of its guises. You're probably talking £10-20, something like that. It's not an expensive book, but I think it's probably one of the first of its kind that had a remit to, show Elvis candidly throughout the whole book. There's a little bit on Jim Curtin himself there. You can read that. Yeah, he had a phenomenal collection. Absolutely phenomenal. The stuff that he had in there, mind-blowing. So, let's have a little look-see. See, we start with a fantastic, I'd say that's 69 Candids of the King. So we start in the 50s. Nothing particularly unseen there, although in 1992 I guess it may have been. But Yeah, there we go. You start seeing some shots that, if they've been republished since, I've no doubt they were pretty darn rare at the time. Glorious, glorious stuff. It's funny really, because although Elvis looked undeniably cool as you like in the 50s, I tend to prefer Candids from the late 60s and 70s for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe yeah, I think I probably do, actually, thinking about that. You know, at this time, Elvis was photographed a lot professionally, and even throughout the 60s, he was photographed a lot. So you get a lot of photographs of him living his daily life kind of thing. Not necessarily candids, but, you know, as we see in the 70s, there are no longer any publicity shoots. Pretty much every single photograph of every single album cover was Elvis on stage, because that was all they had. So I think it's probably that sort of gravitates me more towards those eras and the Candids. You kind of almost get a glimpse behind the image that, you know, everything else was the image. There were stage shots and concert shots, you know, it was Elvis the public person, but we didn't really get to see much of Elvis the private person, so that's where the Candids really come in that era. But I hope you see him from this one. You know, I imagine a lot of people have got this one. As I say, it's one of those that was produced in huge numbers and always seems to be popping up for sale in one guise or another. There was later paperback editions of it. But, you know, 1992, let's put this into context, and let's look at some of the photographs that I'm pretty certain would have been new to a lot of people's eyes at that time. Just awesome stuff. Absolutely great. Let me know in the comments, do you have a favourite era of Elvis Candids, or do you love all Elvis Candids? You know, I think he didn't take a bad photograph. I've seen probably half a dozen ish where he was caught so off guard that it hasn't caught him at the most flattering angle, but let's face it, this was one photogenic human being, wasn't it? You know, he just looked good, whatever. So here we go, these are army ones. Yeah, a lot of Candids from the army, really. You know, the times that he was in Munich, the times that he was in Paris, all around Germany, you know. But I suppose when you think about it, that was kind of, Elvis the Entertainer was on hold, so almost every single photograph of him there was, if you like, the private Elvis, as opposed to the public entertainer. But yeah, this book, really, really good. You know, I think when you think how old it is, I think it still really, really holds up well. It's well put together. And we've got Hollywood now. So you get a little bit of introduction to each section. And then you get the photographs. An absolute wealth. You know, I've in recent times, there was a photo book I pulled out and had a bit of a dig at because it was so badly captioned. And when you think about it, that book, you could probably get this pretty much for the same price. It's you know, and there's just no comparison. This, you know, what this gives is absolutely fantastic. There we go, on the set of Follow That Dream. superb. Yeah, you gotta love an Elvis Candid. It's almost like a sort of peek behind the curtain, if you like. Although he was always an extremely approachable person and was always making time for his fans, you know, as he said that quote at the Madison Square Garden conference about, you know, the image is one thing and the human being's another. And I think, you know, that being the case, books like this really give you a glimpse of the human being behind the superstar. So, you know, I can't get enough of a Candid book. Golf cart shenanigans. We're getting into 68, 69. And around this time there seems to be a lot of photographs of him around the gates of his various homes, not only Graceland. But, you know, his availability there for the fans to photograph him. Just always made time, you know, just, again, you know, it's that glimpse of the human being and what a wonderful, warm, generous human being he was. And then we get Las Vegas comeback. I'm not sure I'd call that, well, I suppose it is a Candid, but let's say some of these now have become more familiar to us over the years, but you know, at the time, just a fantastic book. And as I say, to my money, still stands up really well today. And if it's something that you haven't got in your collection and you see it, and you should see it at a good price, I'd heartily recommend you snap it up and add it, because it's well worth it. Just great stuff. Absolutely great stuff. Getting in and out of limos and that, you get quite a few of those. Madison Square Garden, Elvis and Lisa. And Final Decline. Don't really like the chapter title there, to be honest, but I suppose it's hard to deny, I guess, that that's what it was. Although Elvis in Hawaii Last Vacation, I don't think that is. I think that's the vacation was it 68 or 69? I know we all know he went to Hawaii in the Last Vacation, but I don't think that's it. So there you go, you know, and even a that's a great photograph. Even you know, a book put together from a wealth of material like this can have the odd slip up, unfortunately, but nevertheless, Unseen Elvis, fantastic. Right, now we're going to get on to my favourite two books of Candids. Now, this first one came out in 2003. There was an accompanying DVD that came out at the time. It was sold separately. This is Bud Glass Productions, and this is Memories from the Private Journal Entries of Sandy Miller, photographs from the personal collection of Russ Howe and Sandy Miller. This is an absolute treasure. This one is out of print now. This one is quite hard to get your hands on. I've seen it selling anything from sort of the £110, £20 up to 170, 80. So it is pretty rare now. But one of those, you know, sometimes I know I sound like a stuck record, but if you see this at a reasonable price and you don't have it, go for it, because we'll see what I mean. If you're not familiar with this book, you'll see what I mean. We've got a foreword from John Wilkinson. We've got sort of background of Sandy Miller's diaries and journals, and how the material in this came about. And then you get them sort of split into sections when she was taking these photographs. So this is August 3rd, 1966. Elvis en route to MGM Studios filming his 23rd movie, Double Trouble. So, Sandy Miller, obviously one of those super fans that saw Elvis a lot and snapped Elvis a lot. And, you get the context. That's July the 4th, 1966. Then we get Elvis in front of his Bel Air home. August 1967 there, Priscilla. This is just, the way it's put together, almost like someone's personal journal. And all the photographs that were snapped together is just beautiful. Beautiful. I talked a few episodes ago, I lose track of time, about how I'd kept the Elvis UK book in my collection even when I'd sold the majority of it. And this was one of the other books that I didn't let go of. This, and also Ken Sharp's Vegas 69. There were just some books that I loved so much that even though I was having a huge sort of release of cash at the time, there was some I just couldn't let go of. And this is one of them. This is fantastic. Just, the glimpses you get into the private Elvis here through one person's photographs. Well, obviously they're photographs of Russ Howe and Sandy Miller, so they're two people involved. Let's make sure we get that right. But this is interesting. Look, you get a section on the California homes of Elvis Presley. So you get 525 Perugia Way, Bel Air, California, and you get sort of shots that were taken outside that particular residence. Obviously that's the meeting with the Beatles, which we don't see much of, although I'm sure John Lennon was in one of them. It doesn't show it here. This is 10550 Rocker Place, Bel Air, California. This is a nice little touch, You don't see this in many books. 1174 Hillcrest, Truesdale Estates, Beverly Hills, California. 144 Monteval, Holmby Hills, Los Angeles, California. And 845 Chino Canyon Road, Palm Springs, California. Now, I know he wasn't at all of these for particularly long, but he moved around a bit, didn't he? 135 Ladera Circle, Palm Springs, California. And then we start getting some more Candids. That's got to be 68, surely. Yeah, August 31st, 68. Coolest human being on the planet at the time that ever lived. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Look at these photographs. And look at the time that he spends with people. It's just... I know over the years there's been some celebrities that are very generous with their time, but I think they're few and far between, aren't they? Certainly to this level. Just, we know that as far as Elvis was concerned, without the fans, he wouldn't be who he was because they made him. But even so, the level of time that he made for people was way above and beyond what you kind of expect. Just extraordinary. That's a brilliant one. I think that was some huge Christmas wreath that was made up entirely of IBM cards sprayed with gold paint. The thing was almost as big as Elvis himself. He said he was glad they didn't mail it because it wouldn't have fit in his mailbox. It's huge. Just absolutely glorious. So good. Now, as I said, this was one that I had originally, and I never got around at the time to getting the sequel, Behind the Image 2. I've only picked that up this time around, but we'll get to that in a minute. Because you kind of think, well, this is so packed with Candids throughout, you know. It's quite a specific period, isn't it? I think, as I was saying with the other one, I like the later Candids, and that's kind of what this gives you. You know, it doesn't have anything sort of pre-mid-60s. But, you know, you get so many here, you kind of think, how are they going to do a sequel? There's just so much in here, but, you know, they managed it. They managed it. There's the Astrodome press conference. Just look at these photographs. And I say the journal itself makes some really, really interesting reading as well. You know, you can't beat a first-hand account of somebody that was there at the time. And we start getting into the early 70s, 1970 there. Look, this is after the LA Forum concert in 1970. The dry cleaners came to pick up their usual load of dry cleaning from the Hillcrest house. Everyone spotted that fringe jumpsuit as the guy was carrying out the suit, and we begged him to let us take some photos of the suit, which he did. And then go on. Yes, awesome memories. So there we go. In 1970, and it looks like that's the way at his rehearsals with that shirt. Very familiar shot. I saw that jacket was strange. It looked like sort of PVC rather than leather, which it was strange. Those photographs are great. Elvis said, January 1971, Elvis was returning from a karate tournament he had just attended in Long Beach, California. It's a great set of photographs. He looks so cool there. There we go. I think there's a lot of photographs you see with him, people sort of handing him their babies, a bit like a sort of presidential candidate, and getting the baby's photograph with Elvis. His bike, leaving the Hillcrest house in 71. There's the photographs, 72. On his trikes. Trike. No, there's two different ones. That's the gold and red one. That's the one that was at the Arches London exhibition a couple of years back. Just awesome. Absolutely awesome. And you get a bit about Bud Glass. So he's the actual author. Put this together from Sandy Miller's journal and photographs from her and Russ Howe. And then you get Coming Soon, Behind the Image, Volume 2. You get a bit of bits and pieces, a few adverts really, of the time, as I say, 2003. So then, in 2005, we got Behind the Image Volume 2. And this really ups the ante. This is quite a bit thicker than the original volume. Now, you will find this today on eBay and people will be charging quite a lot for it. However, if you go to the website Pray to Me Publishing, you will find brand new copies for sale for €34. And last time I looked, there were still 714 copies available. So don't let yourself get ripped off on eBay. €34 and get yourself a brand new copy. And there's also some of their other books available. Obviously not that one. But this, you get more of the same. Look, memories from the private journal entries of Sandy Miller, photographs from the personal collections of Russ Howe and Sandy Miller. But you get even more in this. As I said, I was sceptical to sort of start with this one of, well, what else can I do? Forward by Cathy Westmoreland, no less. Introduction by Sandy Miller. enjoy the memories indeed. So we do get some 50s shots at the beginning, and quite unusual rare 50s shots, I think. So, you know, it's already doing something a little bit different to the first volume, in that we go in a little bit earlier, and quite considerably earlier, which is nice. So, you know, you're already getting something different to start with. Just I give these, like, you know, 10 out of 10, 11 out of 10. These 2 volumes are brilliant. And if you don't have them, so you can get this one easily, and for what you're getting, 34 euro. All right, if you're outside of Europe, or mainland Europe, if you like, you're going to pay a little bit for shipping, but from what I remember, it isn't extortionate. Whereas, you know, if this was a new book coming out now, with what this offers, I think you'd easily be talking 70, 80 pounds. So, you know, 34 euro, absolute bargain. Look at that. You know, there's no duplicates here. There might be some photographs from, you know, the same days and same times, but there's no duplicates. You're getting a whole new book of these candid photographs. Where are we there? May the 8th, 1968. Got a bottom photograph. Brilliant. Brilliant. May the 16th, 1968. There's that photograph. June 2nd, 1968, on a plane. And the quality of the printing's really good as well. You know, there's not many sort of indistinct and blurry photographs. The reproduction of them all is absolutely fantastic. Okay, another shot of Elvis having someone's baby thrust at him. Oh, look at these. You see, a lot of these in recent years have found this Elvis in his coleslaw. It's not coleslaw, it's coleslaw. He's trying to hide it, look, and he's you find a lot of these since, in the ensuing 20 years, have since found their way into other publications. I'm seeing a lot here that I've seen in the Elvis files. But of course the Elvis files was after these, so this was the first time that these appeared, and gathered them all together. So, you know, I would say even if you have all of the Elvis files volumes and you haven't got this, it's still going to be worth picking up, because you're still going to see things in here that you won't have seen in there, and here they're kind of all nicely gathered together in one coherent candid whole, if you like. That's a nice little snappy catchphrase there, isn't it? Coherent candid whole. Not a whole that's candid, as in, you know what I mean. You might not. I often don't. Is that the Stutz Black Hawk? I think it might be. So these shots around the MGM studios for That's the Way It Is. And that's another kind of, is that the same PVC sort of looking jacket? It's a strange shiny creation he's got there. Oh, look at these. That's Sonny West's wedding. Is it? Yeah. Shots at getting police badges and what have you at various stations. Elvis in his police torch. Arlie. Candids in cars. Lots of candids in cars. I love a candid in a car. And he is in the, Elvis loved his new Stutz Black Hawk. He told us all about the car, and he also talked about that cane he had with jewels on the top. According to him, it had a gun in the top of the handle, but who knows if he was telling the truth or not. He liked to pull your leg on things like that. Someone asked him for his cigar and he said, "You can have it when I'm done with it." Okay, cigar smoked by Elvis in the early 70s. What a guy. Just fantastic. As I say, the man behind the myth. What's this? We can't go into detail of everything, we'll be here all day unfortunately, but that looks an interesting thing. Something come. Oh yeah, 1971 I think. I'm not sure. So where are we? 72. Absolutely love these books. That's I think that's Elvis, seeing one of the first ever Elvis kind of impersonators. Yeah, they shook hands. He drove. The man at the gates commented that Elvis had made his day. But yeah, it's like he's kind of Elvis seeing one of the first. Oh, fantastic. Wow. It's been a little while since I had these down off the shelves, and you kind of have them tucked away and forget how good they are until you take a flick through them again and realise just why you rate them as highly as you do. Absolutely fantastic. Getting towards 76, 77 actually. Market Square Arena. Quite fitting for the time of year that's approaching. But, that's when you watched The Spy. I love me with it. I rented it out there. Well, I think it was one of the last films he saw, or must be heading that way. And we get a bit about Bud Glass, a bit about the sort of Kodak instant camera that a lot of these were taken on, and then some blurb. So there was a Behind the Image 3 DVD, but there were only 2 Behind the Image books, and then get some adverts for some other bits and pieces at the back. So as I say, that one runs at 142 pages, whereas the original one came in at about the 120 mark. So actually it's not phenomenally bigger, it just looks it. But 3 fantastic books. We started with Unseen Elvis, which is great, a little bit older but still great, and then you've got these 2. They're about 20 years old, but to me they're kind of landmark publications that hold up as well today as when they came out. This one pretty hard to get hold of, this one very easy to get hold of. If you don't have them and you see them, grab them, because you won't regret it. These are 2 fantastic additions to anyone's Elvis collection. There we go. So let me know in the comments what you think. Is it something you had at the time, you've had since? What's your opinion of them? Are there any Candid books that I haven't shown that you think are just as good, if not better? Are these something you don't have and you'd like to get? Just let me know in the comments, and let me know in the comments your impressions, and if you happen to be lucky enough to have met him, your memories of Elvis the man, because I think it's really important that we amongst all that fame, amongst all that talent, amongst all that legend, we don't forget that human being that Elvis Presley was. A very, very human being. So thank you so much for watching as ever. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed that little look through some Candids of Elvis. So I don't usually show books in quite as much detail, but I really thought that was, they were worth it. So as I say, thanks for watching. Whatever I do next week, I hope you're able to join me. But until then, take care. Ta-da.
We'll meet you again. May God bless you. Adios.